isn't it?
As we mentioned,
As this is.
Look at this for a sight. The royal procession coming through the Golden Gates at the top of the Straight Mile. And that is where Frankel will be coming down at a much, much faster pace than this in just over half an hour's time. But this, the sight that so many come to Royal Ascot, so many tune in to watch. And in the first carriage we have Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, happily recovered from his bladder infection that took him out of action for some of the Diamond Jubilee, and he celebrated his 91st birthday, was home for that with his family. And the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are joined by the Viscount Ullswater, who's Chief Whip of the House of Lords. He's on the far side in the grey top hat, and Lord Vestey, who is Master of the Horse and was until recent years the chairman of Cheltenham Racecourse, and also is the brother-in-law of Henrietta Knight, the trainer who trained Best Mate and has recently retired from training. And the Queen will have entertained her guests at Windsor Castle. They'll have had lunch there and then join the carriages and make this full royal procession. In the second carriage we have the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, and with them Lord and Lady Irwin. Now Lord Irwin, James, is a godson of the Duchess of Cornwall, so they know each other extremely well and have plenty to chat about, and his wife Georgia there in the carriage. And James is the son of the Earl and Countess of Halifax, who are actually waiting by the winner's enclosure excitedly and looking at him on the big screen as we speak. And a great thing for them to enjoy. In carriage 3 we have Princess Eugenie, the younger daughter of the Duke of York, on the far side there, waving and smiling away, and with her the Duchess of Gloucester, and opposite them the Duke of Gloucester and Mr. Philip Mitchell. And in the final carriage, Viscountess Ullswater, whose husband was in the first carriage, the Right Honourable Sir Christopher Geit, and Mr. and Mrs. Peter Vella. Now Peter Vella is from New Zealand. He is the breeder of the great race mare Ethereal, who won the Melbourne Cup in 2001, and he runs Pentcarrow Stud on the North Island. And he also owns New Zealand Thoroughbreds, which is the equivalent of Tattersalls in New Zealand, and sponsors Mark Todd, who came back to international glory when winning badminton last year and will be hoping to represent New Zealand in the Olympics this summer. So a fabulous sight. And they'll start to hit the crowds in a moment or two as they come past the silver ring, and the cheers will ring out. So at the moment, everybody looking at the big screens and seeing the close-up shots. And Willie, you know better than anybody actually how much the Queen understands about racing.
Yes, she loves her racing, and she loves especially coming to Ascot. And she actually has got a little piece in the programme today. She would like to thank you for the welcome my family and I have always received at Royal Ascot, and to wish you all the most an enjoyable day. That's from Her Majesty.
But not me, everybody.
No, that's to
everybody.
everybody.
Like that was to me. Of course it's not to me. She'd like to rate me.
But she is a great supporter of horse racing, great breeder herself, and she is a person who loves this week to come to Royal Ascot. And then, as you were saying earlier about Frankel, the breeders, she will stay in the paddock after she arrives here, and she will cast her eye over Frankel, thinking about which mare she will be sending to Frankel next season, if he retires, that is.
And the Queen has had 20 Royal Ascot winners. The last of them was in the Chesham Stakes of 2008, free agent winning. And you'd have ridden a few.
Yes.
Have you ridden a Royal Ascot winner for the Queen?
I've actually rode a Royal Ascot double in 1979 on Expansive in the Ribblesdale and Buttress in the Queen's Vase. So I don't know if she's ever had a double very often at Royal Ascot, but I was lucky enough to be doing it for her, trained by the Major Dick Hearn, of course, who trained at West Ilsley, and the stables at some stage was owned by Her Majesty.
And this royal procession dates back to 1825. King George IV was the man who started it with his invited guests and the people that were staying with him. The Queen Victoria came in 1838, but then after Prince Albert died, she didn't come back again to Ascot after 1861, so there was no royal procession for quite a while then. But the Queen, in her 60 years, has embraced the sport that she has enjoyed since she was a teenager, and first came here to Ascot in 1945 when she was 19 years old as Princess Elizabeth. And the Windsor Greys leading the procession here, it's just the most extraordinary sight, isn't it, Willie, when you think we're in 2012 and people can fly into space, and this represents so much about history and tradition that you don't find it in other countries.
We have been doing this sort of thing for what, 400 or 500 years in this country, so we have a lot of tradition, and this is one of the great traditions that's been upheld here at Royal Ascot, with Her Majesty doing the same thing year in, year out. And it doesn't matter if it was pouring with rain, she would still come down the course in the open carriages, maybe with an umbrella, but they still come in open carriages. And as you said, what a great sight to see Her Majesty. Isn't it great to see the Duke of Edinburgh waving to the crowd there after him? I felt sorry for them. I was watching it on television when they were doing the parade along the river, and they stood there for 4 hours standing on their feet. We have to do it here, but standing there for 4 hours in the pouring rain was a great feat for them both to have done. Thank you very much indeed.
And we'll hear the national anthem played by the band of the Coldstream Guards. The Coldstream Guards were trooping the colour on Saturday. Their musical director is Major Darren Wolfendale. And the carriages coming by the silver ring, and they'll come to the grandstand. You can see the beginning of the grandstand there. The band of the Coldstream Guards playing the national anthem as the royal procession turns left and heads through the tunnel underneath the grandstand and will come into the paddock itself, make a full circuit of the paddock. And there are hundreds of people around the paddock. It's a fabulous amphitheatre, and was built very much with the royal procession in mind, so that more people could get on the steps and have a clear view. And a lovely shot there of the Prince of Wales, after whom tomorrow's feature race is named, and it could be won by the Queen, because she has Carlton House in the lineup for the Prince of Wales.
She has a big chance. He has to improve, but he has a big chance. But look, you're talking about the crowd round the paddock here, Claire. I'm sure the Queen can pull more people around the paddock than Frankel can.
Actually, today they get the wonderful chance that just staying for another 10 minutes they get both. As it were.
Exactly.
The Queen had a winner last night at Warwick, actually, a very nice filly called Set to Music won the
It was an Oaks.
Warwickshire Oaks, yes.
Congratulations, ma'am.
And the Queen is wearing a pale blue wool and silk dress and coat by Stuart Parvin. It's a new outfit. And the hat also in pale blue, designed by Rachel Trevor Morgan, who designs and makes many of the Queen's hats these days. does a fantastic job, because actually it's the practicality of the hat as well as the style of it that's important, and particularly coming down here.
Talking about hats, Claire.
Not blowing off in the wind is a key one.
Talking about hats, how about yours?
Oh, thank you. Do you like it?
Yes.
Thank you. I think the Duchess of Cornwall's got a fabulous hat on as well, in that sort of buttermilk
We're
colour.
getting 3 cheers.
And another 3 cheers as well.
Yes.
It's like a 3 cheers version of a Mexican wave. As the procession moves around the paddock, you get more spontaneous cheers.
We British, don't we do it well? Isn't this fantastic? There's not many other countries you could go to and get a pageant as grand as this. This is really lovely to see those grey horses, well turned out, everybody spruced up, and nothing goes wrong. Oops, I said that. And the strap broke.
Just the harness coming up the side of the Cleveland Bay there, pulling the second carriage. And you know, I bumped into some people an hour ago who were making their way to the paddock here to make sure that they got their seats right for the royal procession so that they could see it clearly. And we do expect that the royal party will remain in the paddock and wait for the horses to come in for our opening race, the Queen Anne Stakes, named after the monarch who founded Ascot Racecourse in 1711. In those days, racing was rather different. Big, very heavy hunter-type horses, more like the horses you can see pulling the carriages there, are sort of hunter-type horses that were racing over 4 miles in legs. So they do 3 separate heats of 4 miles.
Well, years ago they used to do that, yes, but they used to go very, very steady. They used to just hack canter around and then sprint finishes. But most of these horses, they're like the Irish in Bay, you know, they're like a Cleveland Bay types. And the Irish cob.
The Irish draft.
The Irish draft, yes.
The cavalry, the household cavalry horses tend to be the Irish draft cross with a thoroughbred. Some lovely replay shots there of the Queen waving to the crowds, and you can see those are the lift shafts for this amazing grandstand, and they have been recovered in the Union flag, the red, white and blue everywhere. 80,000 Union Jack flags have also been handed out to racegoers, so they'll be waving those all day. And actually, when you look at that grandstand, it has the largest number of private boxes of any sporting facility in Europe. 255 of them, and it stretches all the way down to the right. The private boxes go away to the right hand side there and sort of down to the furlong marker and beyond.